Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 49 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4. And we are starting chapter 22, which is titled Prithu Maharaja's Meeting with the Four Kumars. First of all, let us begin with our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachahane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpaturabhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, okay, day 49, chapter 22. In chapter 22, there are 63 verses, so it really is longer. It's a long chapter. I mean, we do have some chapters which are longer, very few, but we do have up to 80 or something. But anyway, chapter 22 is 63 verses, which we have divided up into 5 sections. First section is verse 1 to verse 6. The four Kumars arrive. Then second section, verse 7 to verse 16. King Prithu addresses the four Kumars. Section 3, verse 17 to verse 40. Sanat Kumar responds to Prithu Maharaj. Fourth section, verse 41 to 47. King Prithu worships the Kumars. And then the fifth section, verse 48 to verse 63, the qualities of Prithu Maharaj. So there you go, devotees. That's what we're going to be looking at now. So, first of all, the first section, verse 1 to verse 6, the four Kumars arrive. Right, so let us read through all the verses. Verse 1, the great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful King Prithu, the four Kumars, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. Verse 2, seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumars, the masters of all mystic power, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. Verse 3, seeing the four Kumars, Prithu Maharaj was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore the king with all his officers very hastily got up, as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. Verse 4, when the great sages accepted their reception, according to the instructions of the Shastras, and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. Thus he worshipped the four Kumars. Verse 5, after this the king took the water which had washed the lotus feet of the Kumars and sprinkled it over his hair. By such respectful actions, the king as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive a spiritually advanced personality. Verse 6. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Prithu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. Okay, so back to the beginning again, verse 1. The great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful King Prithu, the four Kumars, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. No purport there. Verse 2. Seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumars, the masters of all mystic power, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. Right, okay. So let's go through the purport here. So, right, the Kumars in the verse are called Siddheshvaran, the masters of all mystic power. And the point is, if you attain perfection in yoga practice, you immediately become master of the 8 mystic perfections. And Srila Prabhupada mentions what it looks like, 5 of the perfections here: to become smaller than the smallest, lighter than the lightest, bigger than the biggest, to achieve anything one desires, to control everything, etc. So because they were Siddheshvaran, masters of all mystic power, they were able to travel in outer space without machines. So therefore they didn't come to Prithu Maharaj by airplane, but personally. So they are spacemen who can travel without machines. And the residents of Siddhaloka can also do this. But the thing is that wherever the Kumars go, immediately becomes sinless, which is not the case just generally. And Prabhupada makes Prabhupada concludes the purport here by saying that during the reign of Maharaj Prithu, everything on the surface of this globe was sinless, and therefore the Kumars decided to see the king. Ordinarily, they do not go to any planet which is sinful. So because this planet Earth was completely sinless at the time, therefore the Kumars decided to come. Right. Verse 3. Seeing the 4 Kumars, Prithu Maharaj was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore the king, with all his officers, very hastily got up, as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. Yeah, you get the idea. The enthusiasm of Prithu Maharaj, seeing the 4 Kumars, his enthusiasm to get their association was just so powerful, just like a conditioned soul who's just completely into just some material attraction, just like that. So anyway, every conditioned soul is influenced by some particular mixture of the modes, and therefore each conditioned soul is attracted to certain types of activities, which varies from conditioned soul to conditioned soul, but a particular conditioned soul who's attracted to particular set of activities finds that, as Prabhupada says, he's forced to perform whatever activity it is under the influence of material nature. So here, Prithu Maharaj is compared to such a conditioned soul, not because he's one at all, but just because he's so anxious to receive the Kumas, that Prabhupada says that it seemed that without them he would lose his life. So Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain how the conditioned souls are attracted by different objects of sense gratification. The eyes like to see something beautiful, ears like to hear something nice, the nose wants to smell something, some nice flower, the tongue wants to taste nice food. I mean, nice in terms of what the particular conditioned soul is attracted to. Like some, in terms of food, we know some conditioned souls, they're attracted to very spicy food. Some others will not take any spice at all. So it depends on the particular modes of material nature that the particular conditioned soul is influenced by. But the basic point is that every conditioned soul is attracted to certain things to such a degree he can't restrain himself. Just can't restrain himself. So similarly, Prithu Maharaj couldn't restrain himself from meeting the Kumas. So they were effulgent and wonderful, and so Prithu and his officers and associates received them. And, there's the famous saying, birds of a feather flock together. So here we have people of the same categories. They're all very spiritual people. They're attracted to the Kumas. Otherwise, drunkards are attracted to drunkards, but saintly people are attracted to other saintly people. And Prithu Maharaj, he's in the topmost position of spiritual advancement, so he's attracted to the Kumas who are in the same category. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, "It is said, therefore, that a man is known by his company." Verse 4, "When the great sages accepted their reception, according to the instructions of the Shastras, and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. Thus he worshipped the four Kumas." So, in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada points out initially how the four Kumas, they are spiritual masters of one of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. There are four Sampradayas. Our Sampradaya is the Brahma Sampradaya. Then there's the Shri Sampradaya, coming from Lakshmi. Then there's the Rudra Sampradaya, coming from Lord Shiva. And then there's the Kumar Sampradaya, coming from the Kumars. Yeah. So Prithu Maharaj knew these are Sampradaya Acharyas. So he was very respectful in meeting them. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's interesting, he wrote Govastakam, in which the 7th verses starts as Sakshatari Tvainasamasta Shastrai, which Prabhupada here applies that a spiritual master or the Parampara Acharya should be respected exactly like the Lord. And they, the four Kumars, well, they're spiritual masters, of course, but they're also Parampara Acharyas. So, right, Srila Prabhupada then goes on to say that the word vidivat is significant. It means Pritu is also strictly following Shastra in receiving a spiritual master or Acharya. Yeah. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, whenever an Acharya is seen, one should immediately bow down before him. Prithu Maharaj did this properly. Therefore, the words used here are prashrayanata kandara. Out of humility, he bowed down before the Kumars. Verse 5. After this, the king took the water which had washed the lotus feet of the Kumars and sprinkled it over his hair. By such respectful actions, the king, as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive a spiritually advanced personality. Right, so let's have a look at the purport here. Lord Chaitanya said, Apani Achari Prabhu Jivere Shikaya, which basically means, as Prabhupada says next, it's very well known that whatever Lord Chaitanya taught in his life, he himself practiced. So this is the basic point in that, the quotation there. So, for example, when he was preaching as a devotee, Lord Chaitanya, although he was detected on a few occasions, Prabhupada says several, great devotees detected him to be an incarnation of Krishna, but Lord Chaitanya never agreed to be addressed as an incarnation. Yes. There's, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's one really nice incident. Lord Chaitanya, it's in, I think, chapter 22 of Madhya Lila. Anyway, it's where Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatana Goswami. And so at that point, Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatana Goswami on the different types of avatars. And Sanatana, of course, knows that Lord Chaitanya is in the role of a Yuga avatar. So Sanatana, apparently innocently, is asking that, is there a Yuga avatar in Satya Yuga? Lord Chaitanya says, yes, and explains about the Yuga avatar in Satya Yuga. And Sanatana says, and what about Treta Yuga? Is there also one then? Lord Chaitanya explains about that. And then Sanatana says, well, what about Dwapara Yuga? Is there a Yuga avatar there? Lord Chaitanya says, yes, of course, and explains about that. And then, so now Sanatana Goswami knows that Lord Chaitanya is in the role of the Yuga avatar for Kali Yuga, but just acting innocently. He says, well, what about Kali Yuga? Is there also a Yuga avatar? Of course, it's Lord Chaitanya himself. And Lord Chaitanya initially just says, yes, of course. But then he understands he's trying to catch me. Because Sanatana Goswami wanted to get Lord Chaitanya to admit, all right, it's me, I'm an avatar, I'm Yuga avatar, and whatever like that. So Lord Chaitanya, when Sanatana asked, he said, yes. And Sanatana said, I heard that he chants the holy names. Lord Chaitanya said, yes. I heard he comes with his associates. Lord Chaitanya says, yes. and they start the Sankirtan movement. And Lord Chaitanya says to Sanatan, stop your clever questions, Sanatan, and let me now explain about the Shaktyavesh avatars. In other words, he changed the subject. According to the science of argument, if you ever get caught in a situation and you can't escape, change the subject. So anyway, so Lord Chaitanya was there, and he did not want to be identified publicly as an incarnation. And Prabhupada makes the point that if someone is an incarnation, or especially empowered like Prithu Maharaj, shouldn't advertise himself as such. In due course, people will come to understand the truth. Yeah, so there's no need to go out of one's way to sort of, identify oneself publicly. So Prithu Maharaj, of course, he was ideal Vaishnav king, so he taught others by his behavior how to receive saintly people, like the Kumars. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, when a saintly person comes to one's home, it is the Vedic custom first to wash his feet with water, and then sprinkle this water over the heads of oneself and one's family. Prithu Maharaj did this, for he was an exemplary teacher of the people in general. Okay, so we go on, devotees, now to verse 6. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Prithu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. So Prabhupada discusses in the purport, the Kumars are described here as older brothers of Lord Shiva. But of course they're in the forms of children. Yeah, they're in the forms of children because when they were first born, Lord Brahma asked them, please marry and increase population, because he wanted them to be Prajapatis. And there was a great need for universal population, but they refused because they didn't want to get entangled. They wanted to remain free brahmacharis and be fully engaged in devotional service. And of course, as I'm sure you know, they by some mystical potency, they have, how would you say, arranged it, would you say? Anyway, even though they're old, they're older than Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is fully grown adult, but they have kept their bodies as the bodies of little children. So therefore they're called Naishtika brahmacharis, means they're never going to marry. So when they refused, Brahma became angry, his eyes became reddish, from between his eyes came Lord Shiva, Rudra. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the mode of anger is consequently known as Rudra. Lord Shiva also has a Sampradaya party, known as the Rudra Sampradaya, and they're also known as Vaishnavas. All right, so second section, from verse 7 to verse 16, titled King Prithu Addresses the Four Kumars. Right, so verse 7, King Prithu spoke, my dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I've performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. 8. Any person upon whom the Brahmins and Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world as well as after death. Not only that, but one also receives the favor of the auspicious Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, who accompany the Brahmins and Vaishnavas. Verse 9, Prithu Maharaj continued, although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you, just as they cannot know the Supersoul, although he is within everyone's heart as the witness of everything. Even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the Supersoul. Right, so verse 10. A person who's not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place, and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and the home itself is also glorified. Verse 11, on the contrary, even though full of all opulence and material prosperity, any householder's house where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in, and where there is no water for washing their feet, is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live. Amazing. Verse 12. Maharaj Prithu offered his welcome to the 4 Kamars, addressing them as the best of the Brahmins. He welcomed them, saying, from the beginning of your birth, you strictly observed the vows of celibacy. And although you're experienced in the path of liberation, you're keeping yourselves just like small children. Verse 13. Prithu Maharaj inquired from the sages about persons entangled in this dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. Could such persons, whose only aim is sense gratification, be blessed with any good fortune? Okay, so let's see, verse 14. Prithu Maharaj continued, my dear sirs, there's no need to ask about your good and bad fortune, because you're always absorbed in spiritual bliss. The mental concoction of the auspicious and inauspicious does not exist in you. Verse 15. I am completely assured that personalities like you are the only friends for persons who are blazing in the fire of material existence. I therefore ask you how in this material world we can very soon achieve the ultimate goal of life. Verse 16. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always anxious to elevate the living entities who are his parts and parcels, and for their special benefit, the Lord travels all over the world in the form of self-realized persons like you. So it's the second section. King Prithu addresses the 4 Kamars from verse 7 to verse 16. Verse 7. King Prithu said, my dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. So, okay, there's a purport here, not big, but it's a purport. Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, when something uncommon happens in one's progressive spiritual life, it should be understood to be incurred by agyata sukriti, or pious activities beyond one's knowledge. So, to see personally the Lord or even a pure devotee, that's not an ordinary incident, but rather it's caused by previous pious activities, really like very remarkable pious activities. And that's confirmed. Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 verse 28, Yesham twantagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam, that only one who's completely freed from all sinful reactions and absorbed in pious activity, only such a person can engage in devotional service, or in this case, can see personally the Lord, or a very elevated pure devotee, like some of us saw Srila Prabhupada. The good fortune behind that is inconceivable completely. So anyway, although Prithu Maharaj's life was full of pious activities, still he was wondering how he got audience with the Kumars. He couldn't imagine what he must have done piously to get that. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, this is a sign of humility on the part of King Prithu, whose life was so full of pious activities that even Lord Vishnu came to see him and predicted that the Kumars would also come. Verse 8. Any person upon whom the Brahmins and Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world, as well as after death. Not only that, but one also receives the favor of the auspicious Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, who accompany the Brahmins and Vaishnavas. So, okay, let's have a look at the purport here. It's another sort of moderate-sized purport. Prabhupada makes the point that the Brahmins and Vaishnavas are bearers of Lord Vishnu. And Brahma Samhita confirms that the devotees, out of love for the Lord, are always carrying him in their hearts. Verse 38, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. So, of course, the Lord's already there in everyone's heart. But only the Vaishnavas and Brahmins can perceive him. And they know they're carrying him wherever they go. Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, or the devotees of Lord Vishnu, they all go. So, conclusion, Prabhupada says, is that when Brahmins and Vaishnavas are pleased with someone, Lord Vishnu is also pleased. And this is confirmed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Gauravastakam, last verse, Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasada. That by pleasing the spiritual master, who's both a Brahmin and a Vaishnav, one pleases the Lord. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased, then one has nothing more to achieve either in this world or after death. Verse 9, Prithu Maharaj continued, although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you, just as they cannot know the Supersoul, although he's within everyone's heart, as the witness of everything. Even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the Supersoul. Yes, so Prabhupada right at the beginning of the purport, reminds us even of a very important point made in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Muyanti yat surayaha. This is part of the first verse of the whole Bhagavatam, which means that even great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are sometimes bewildered trying to understand the Lord. So when Krishna was here, both Brahma and Lord Brahma and Lord Indra mistook him. You know the stories. Lord Brahma stole the cowherd boys and calves. Lord Indra sent the great storm, so the Lord had to lift Govardhan Hill. Oh my gosh. They're really terrible mistakes, actually. And what to speak, if you want to talk about mistaken understandings of who Krishna is, then what to speak of the jnanis and yogis who think that the absolute truth is impersonal. So in the same way, great devotees like the Kumars are also invisible to ordinary people, although they're just traveling around here and there. Prabhupada refers to when Srila Sanatana Goswami arrived to see Lord Chaitanya in Varanasi, if I remember correctly. Yeah, just after Sanatan had escaped from his forced work. So when Sanatan arrived at Varanasi to see Lord Chaitanya, Chandrasekhar, the owner of the house where Lord Chaitanya was staying, couldn't recognize Sanatana Goswami. I mean, it's just a very amazing part of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah. So Sanatana Goswami looks like a Muslim, and he's really unkempt because he's been traveling for some days through the hills and mountains and no facility. Chandrasekhar couldn't recognize him. And Lord Chaitanya told Chandrasekhar, "Can you look out the door? I think there's a devotee there." Chandrasekhar looked out, and he was expecting, some tilak and dhoti and kurta, these types of neck beads. But he came back and Chandrasekhar said, "No, there's no devotees there. There's just one Muslim mendicant." And Lord Chaitanya said, "Call him in." So Chandrasekhar did, and Lord Chaitanya embraced him. And and Sanatan embraced Lord Chaitanya. And they were just embracing, and tears just pouring from their eyes. And Chandrasekhar couldn't believe it. So the conclusion, what's the conclusion? It is that the Lord's in everyone's heart, and pure devotees are also traveling around widely. But those under the modes can't understand the Lord's form or the Lord's devotees. So therefore it's said you can't see the Lord or the devotees with material eyes. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, one has to purify his senses and engage in the service of the Lord. Then gradually one can realize who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who is a Vaishnav. Verse 10. A person who is not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place and paraphernalia for reception are glorified. And the home itself is also glorified. Materially speaking, so in the purport now, Prabhupada says that materially speaking, if a man is not rich, he's not glorious. Yeah. And spiritually, if a man is too attached to family life, He's also not glorious. But saintly people are ready to visit a poor man or an attached family man. So anyway, when saintly people come, the owner is glorified, his servants are glorified, because they bathe the feet of the saint. They offer sitting places and do other nice things to receive him. The conclusion is, if a saintly person goes to a house of even an unimportant man, that man becomes glorious by his blessings. The man whose house it is becomes glorious. So therefore, it's the Vedic system that the householders invite saintly people home to get blessings. And Prabhupada says this system's still current in India. Still current, that's a fact. Not on the same scale it used to be, but it's there. So wherever saintly people go, they're hosted, and householders get the chance to receive transcendental knowledge. So therefore it's the duty of the sannyasi to go everywhere, to favor the householders, who are generally ignorant of the values of spiritual life. Second paragraph. It may be argued that all householders are not very rich, and that one cannot receive great saintly persons or preachers because they're always accompanied by their disciples. So if a householder is to receive saintly people, he has to receive the entourage also. Devasa Muni, he's always accompanied by 60,000 disciples. And if there was a small discrepancy in their reception, he would be angry and curse the host. But, I mean, that Devasa is in a special category, and in that respect it's not a good one. But otherwise, every household, regardless of position, can at least receive a saintly person with devotion and offer some water. Maybe a place to sit also. It's the Indian custom that even an ordinary person is offered a glass of water if he suddenly visits and you can't offer food. So, if no water, offer a sitting place, even just on a straw mat. If not a mat, clean the ground, clean the floor, let the guests sit there. If you can't even do that, at least say welcome. And if you can't even do that, you should feel very sorry and shed tears and offer obeisances. In this way, one can satisfy any guest, even if the guest is a saintly person or a king. Right, so on to verse 11. On the contrary, even though full of all opulence and material prosperity, any householder's house where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in, and where there is no water for washing their feet. So such a place is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live. Very, very heavy. So, okay, let's have a look at the purport. Here the word Tirtha Padiya indicates devotees. Regarding the Brahmins, the previous verse has described the mode of reception. And here especially Vaishnavas are being stressed. Generally, sannyasis try to enlighten the householders. So, Prabhupada talks a little bit about the Mayavadi sannyasis. Yeah, they're impersonalists. But the Vaishnavas know the absolute truth is the Lord. Brahman effulgence is based on him as the effulgence of his body, as Bhagavad Gita confirms in 14:27, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. So the conclusion is, Tirthapadya refers to Vaishnavas. Bhagavatam 1.13.10 says, Tirtha Kurvanti Tirtani. Wherever a Vaishnav goes, becomes a place of pilgrimage. So therefore, the Vaishnav sannyasis travel all over the world to make every place a place of pilgrimage by the touch of their lotus feet. And houses which will not receive Vaishnavas, they're like residential places of venomous snakes. So it's said that around sandalwood trees, which are very valuable, there's a serpent. Sandalwood is cold. And serpents, because of their poisonous teeth, always try to keep very warm, or they always do keep very warm. So sometimes they take shelter of sandalwood trees to become cooler. Okay, similarly, many rich men put up signs and have dogs, etc., signs which they don't enter, beware of the dog. Sometimes in the West, a trespasser is shot, and it's not a crime. Even, there have been a number of cases the last few months in America where people just by mistake walked into the wrong place and got shot. So this is the position of demoniac householders. And their houses, their places, are residential places of venomous snakes. And their family members are also like snakes, because snakes are very envious. And when their envy is directed to saintly persons, their position is even more dangerous. So, Chanakya Pandit said there are two types of envious living entities, snake and an envious man. But the envious man is more dangerous than the snake, because a snake can be subdued by mantras or herbs. But envious persons cannot be pacified by any means. Verse 12, Maharaj Prithu offered his welcome to the four Kumars, addressing them as the best of the Brahmins. He welcomed them, saying, "From the beginning of your birth, you strictly observed the vows of celibacy. And although you're experienced in the path of liberation, you're keeping yourselves just like small children." So, in the purport here, the position of the Kumars is discussed. Yeah, they're brahmachari celibate. From birth, they keep themselves like preschool children. So their senses don't develop and become subject to being stimulated by, particularly the opposite sex. And then celibacy will become very difficult. So they purposely remain children. So they're not disturbed by sex life. And Prithu addressed them as the best of the Brahmins. They weren't exactly born the best of Brahmins. Oh, no, they were born of the best Brahmin, Lord Brahma. But they are addressed as Dvija Shrestha, best of the Brahmins. So Prithu Maharaj particularly appreciated them because of their brahmacharya vow. Yes. But he expressed his appreciation of their Vaishnavism by addressing them as Vaishnav Shrestha, means best of the Vaishnavas. In other words, everyone should offer respect to a Vaishnav without considering his birth. If you take exception to a Vaishnav because of their birth, then you are considered Vaishnava Jati Buddhi. you've lost your intelligence. Really lost your intelligence extremely badly. So, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the Vaishnava is always the best of the Brahmins, and as such one should offer all respects to a Vaishnava, not only as a Brahmin, but as the best of the Brahmins, Vaishnava. Verse 13, Prithu Maharaj inquired from the sages about persons entangled in this dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. Could such persons whose only aim is sense gratification be blessed with any good fortune? So Prithu didn't ask them about their good fortune because there's no need. There's no question of them having anything other than good fortune. Yeah. They're always auspicious because of their celibacy. So, yeah, they're on the path of liberation, so no question of ill fortune. In other words, the Brahmins and Vaishnavas strictly following spiritual advancement. They're always fortunate. So Prithu asked for his own sake, since he was a grihasta and royal authority. The kings are not only grihastas who are into sense gratification, but they sometimes kill animals because they have to practice the killing art. So otherwise they can't fight their enemies, if it comes to it, which, it would quite often. Yeah. So such things are not auspicious. Not auspicious. Now, there are 4 kinds of sinful activities allowed for Kshatriyas. Listen to this. This is a bit amazing, actually. Yes, sinful activities allowed for Kshatriyas. Associating with women for illicit sex, eating meat, intoxication, and gambling. They are allowed for Kshatriyas. Yeah, Prabhupada explains in the purport. And sometimes for political reasons, they have to do these things. And they don't refrain from gambling. Clear example was the Pandavas, who had the gambling match for Draupadi. She was insulted. So Prithu Maharaj asked, if there is an auspicious path, Grihastha life is inauspicious because it means consciousness for sense gratification. Therefore it's full of dangers. But this material world, padam yad vipadan natesha, dangers there at every step. Prithu then asked the Kumars about the conditioned souls, rotting in material world because of their past inauspicious activities. Is there any possibility for auspicious spiritual life for them? So the word indriyartarta vedinam is significant. It indicates people whose only aim is to satisfy the senses. So they're also described as patitanam. Only one who stops that means fallen. Only one who stops all activities for sense gratification is considered elevated. Then another significant word is swakarmabi. One becomes fallen by dint of past bad activities. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, everyone's responsible for his fallen condition because of his own activities. When activities are changed to devotional service, one's auspicious life begins. So we will continue on tomorrow. Devotees, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.